Get ready.
Oh,
We've given some.
Right. Jury one, we might make a start, if that's all right. I'll start off with a karakia. Tuia ki ranga, tuia ki raro, tuia ki waho, tuia ki roto, tuia ki te ieri hangata, ka ronga te po, ka ronga te ao, homoe, tuia, tai. So I'm asked for, I'm going to say this is the Otago Southland Regional Transport Committee. If it was
Microphone.
Oh, sorry, microphone too. I'm getting used to it. Right, we've got apologies. We've got apologies from Councillor Jim O'Malley and Councillor Alexa Forbes. Is there any other apologies? No. Can I move her and seek her to sit there? Kate and Phil. All in favour, say aye. Aye. Yes, carried. We do no requests for public forum and particularly communications. And we'll move on to the confirmation of minutes. So if someone, I wasn't here at this last meeting, but Kate has moved those. If someone can second those. Jim. And there's no discussion on that. I will put that. All in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Will we go through our actions? Is that number 5? Right. Sure it is. You over this, Russell? We'll just go through those just to see that.
Apologies, Mr. Chairman, that the item number 3 on that list is the subject of a the subject of a report on the agenda.
Report today. Yeah. James Cables.
The next one was on traffic control. Are you you'll speak to that as part of your NZTA update?
Yeah, with the chair's permission, that's what we'll do.
Yep. There's an item there for Councillor Smith to follow up with the Albert Town community regarding the Albert Town Bridge. Now, I'm not sure just exactly what was expected of it, whether there was something in terms of, remember?
He was going to present, they were going to present at the last meeting, they didn't present and they haven't come this time, so
Okay.
I think the option is presenting anytime they want to, but yeah, they need to.
We just wipe that out and let them come in.
I think it would be good note to feed them to remind him that he was, if they did want to, that they can.
Can I just, I see Quentin's not online.
Give me to.
Just, like he's usually pretty efficient. But we'll just carry on at the stage just to make sure that he's here. Obviously, you can't answer that question too. Going through,
Hartley,
you're doing that today.
So there's an item on the agenda for that today. That was the petition from Waititi was something that had gone to the Otago Police, the Dunedin City, and was to be passed on. Do you know whether whether that had happened or not?
The Waititi petition was forwarded to NZTA.
Right, well, that was forwarded. Yep.
Sorry, can I just make it, there's a room and later in the agenda, just a comment on the change in legislation around the speed management rule or comment on that?
Yes. So when we under item 7, we've got a thing for questions. I think that if you raise that then.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, that's appropriate time. Infrastructure Commission, I'm sorry, we haven't actually progressed that at this stage.
Get it there and feel for the future. Yeah. Should cover it.
The stock effluent disposal sites hasn't gone anywhere at this stage either.
Okay.
And Jim Crutchley was, and he did actually circulate the report.
Oh. I appreciate that was sort of in hindsight. Are the steads all ready for the moving day this year? Because there was an issue last year, and Jim said we had to just checking. it's probably not the right time to bring it up today. Just checking that the stead's out and operating for moving day.
My understanding was that it was still a Mexican standoff. But I've since found out that I think ORC might be paying WDC to remove and cart the foul-smelling Southland material that's being deposited in our dumps to somewhere else.
We're not charging it for the fertilizer transfer.
DNA testing.
We'll call it. Yeah.
Sorry, thank you.
No, all good. Thanks. Right, so that's where we're at with those actions, so we're happy to move on. Confirmation of agenda. No notification of extraordinary business that I know of. Yeah, questions. So you have a question, Christine, you want to add to the discussion, or we answer it now?
It was probably more a comment around the change in legislation with regard to speed management, and particular, I guess this arose through the South District Council in a particular way in relation to Waikaira community that had asked for the speed to be lowered in its area. Probably particularly because of the new bike trail that's occurred up there and the current 100k road speed limit along there, which meant it was quite dangerous for people coming off the cycle trail. And unfortunately, during the time of consultation, the community indicated that they wished to have that speed limit lowered, and was agreed. And but because we're putting in, Hartley, you may need to correct me here, a larger submission in relation to other speed limit areas, it was going to be put in as a separate item. That's my understanding. And but in the meantime, the legislation changed. So although the consultation requirements of the 4 weeks had been met before the rules changed, after the rule changed, it changed to 6 weeks. So therefore, the community have got to go back through the consultation again, even though all the community, everyone else, and SDC was in agreement with it. So it just kind of spoke to the lack of pragmatism, I guess. And I understand a rule is a rule, but there was certainly concern expressed about the ability of local government to manage the speed restrictions, etc., in its own area when it had gone through the consultative process. And as a result of that time, in order to assist, there was advisory signs gone out, but the cycle trail opened 2 weekends ago. And the community and certainly SDC councillors considered a very high risk about cyclists and young cyclists coming off that trail onto a road that's 100 kilometre speed limit. And I think it was noted in other areas concerns about the local government being able to determine its own way in respect of speed limits. And I thank Ian for taking the time to video in to make comments to councillors where they raise this issue, and understand from what we're saying, the rule is a rule, but concern about the overall principle, I guess, there.
Councillor Menzies, is there something you would like this committee to do?
I would think the committee has very little ability to change legislation, but I wonder about the ability of this committee to consider legislation prior to it being introduced, and whether it can make submissions on that, taking into account feedback from the local regions is perhaps one step.
Okay, all right, thanks for that. Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mistakenly sent a similar issue to Kate, and I know that she forwarded it on to you at a late date, but I was asked to countersign a submission by the Hamden community on documentation that they've taken to their local MP, and which I'm happy to sign, but I also said that this is a forum where those sort of issues should come to. So we've currently got, coming from the north, we're reduced from 100 to 80, then in the middle of the town reduced to 60, then it gets back to 70, and then back to 100. They're seeking to rationalise it, to have it at 70 at either end of the town and 50 in the centre of the town, because the majority of businesses are on one side of the road, public toilets on the other. They've actually made a fair effort with their study, and they believe that those changes will add 15 seconds to a motorist travelling through Hampden. I don't want to be hit by a car at any speed, but I'd much rather be hit at 50 than 60 Ks. So it's something that, you know, I believe as a committee we should endorse a practical approach.
I'm not quite sure that we can do it and we want to do it, but is the question one that we need to be doing some advocacy for working with the NZTA on state highways and with TAs on the ability to change. I know it's been a big thing for the previous Minister of Transport, but it is changing, I think, with the current Minister, and it may be that something that when we get the opportunities we can advocate for. I don't think it's going to be a quick burner, but I'm wondering if we should just do that, and then that empowers the chair to bring it up if they ever have the chance.
Absolutely, it's just how can we?
Yeah.
Because it makes sense from a local perspective.
Well, maybe to help short circuit the political process, if Ian's happy, I'll forward the documentation straight to him, and then when he gets it from the local MP, he'll know what's going on.
We're quite happy to take your documentation. Just the one issue around the rule and the reason that we've got no flexibility within it is that people will ultimately be issued tickets on it. And so if it's not set up in accordance with the rule, we can challenge the ticket. So there's a legal process behind it, which, you know, certainly Southland District fell foul of, unfortunately, just due to the time flip between the previous rule and this rule. And what you're talking about in Hampden, there is an ability to put it on a community register, and we'll talk a bit more about that maybe when I come to talk about the NZTA update.
So can we bring that back up again and regards to that? Maybe we'll see an action or something in regards to that.
Thank you, that's useful, because it was also associated, of course, with the requirement under the new legislation for us to go back and change our signs that we had, we would lower the speed limits around school to then pay up to another 50,000 to change them back again to where they were. And if we think about, you know, our impact of our rates on our ratepayers, if there was a prime example of something that did not seem to be necessary. So thank you.
On that question, I understood that you could claim for all of those costs, and I'm wondering if all the councils did do that as well.
Ken, do you want to? Who's going to answer?
I suppose from a local council, yeah, there's ability to apply for additional funding, but it's not all subsidised. It's only based on your funding assistance rate. So councils still have to come up with their share.
Okay. Well, obviously we discuss a little bit later on. Any other questions? No. We'll move on. I'll move on, obviously, onto the chair's report. The main activity for myself and obviously for Kate and Lexi and Phil, we obviously had the Southland Chairs group meeting the 7th of April. We will discuss it probably more so in item 9, but I can always reiterate that I think they're very rewarding and certainly feel like we're getting a wee bit more momentum in some of the studies and bits and pieces we're doing, and we've been talking about data collection and the story, South Island story, freight stories and things. So we can dwell on that a bit later in the meeting. Another meeting we did have, and Christine might have some comments, of we did see Minister Bishop at Mayoral Forum, and and we had the opportunity to Rob has always got plenty to say about roading and things, so it was always good to to get the opportunity to talk to some of these higher the ministers further up the food chain, and I think Rob does a really good job in regards to that. Albeit he did say, oh, well, you can make the numbers look how they want to make them look, so to speak. So basically, I think MP talking about these things, but it was we're still got another opportunity, and locally from down south, we always got to grab those opportunities and really reinforce the Southland discussion. But otherwise, yeah, it wasn't for myself, wasn't too much. But I will ask Pat if you had any things in regards. You're all happy?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
nothing.
And I'll just say, Christine, you in regards to that meeting, you're happy. Well, it's another opportunity to talk to them about the roads and bits and pieces.
Yes, it was. And I guess it's the link in with this committee and how it's a specific TLA issue, and highlighting that to the government to look specifically around a change in the FAR rate that will enable us to do the work that we do just to maintain the roads as opposed to doing anything additionally to it. And I don't know whether it will be useful for this committee to understand what the issues are within Southland District Council. And that presentation that we made does take about half an hour or so, but it provides that perspective, and understand the role of the regional councils, but being able to portray that through the meeting that you have in Christchurch through chairs, getting that understanding and taking it through that level, as well as us just presenting individually to ministers when they're visiting Southland and taking advantage of that opportunity, which you have to do every time a minister changes.
Yeah.
And I think we're trying to be on our third presentation next week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The race is a really interesting issue, and we're trying to get ourselves away from party politics. And maybe our last hurrah as a regional transport committee could be actually meeting across council, across parties, and just meeting and telling a cohesive story about what we're passing on to the next council. But bringing in MPs, we used to do that as a DCC council. We bring them in, all of the councillors, also all of the local MPs together. And it was a really helpful way of breaking. I mean, amazing how they work together well across the parties, but making sure that they understand the cohesive story as well, rather than being party orientated. And if we could set something up, even online, where we all got to give that sort of view of what the issues are to some of the local MPs, whichever colour they wear, it might be a good timely thing to do a year out from elections.
The last comment in regards to the meeting we had down south is, and it's always amuses me that there was indication, there's money there. Yeah, we're asking for money, but they said it's hard to get. I'm going, well, it's an interesting thing when the community wants to spend money, and you get your budgets cut back and things like that. So we just have to keep really pushing harder and harder for it. So, but anyway, that's I'll table that in regards to my report anyway. So if I'm happy to move that. Second, Kate, second, all in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Right. We'll move on to item 9, staff reports, and 9.1. And you're going to lead this, Russell?
And
In regards to that.
introduce it, Mr. Chairman, thank you. So this item is really here as a follow-up to what we were talking about in the workshop this morning. And because the workshop this morning, in a workshop situation, you're not allowed to make specific decisions, etc. The concept was that this gives you the opportunity to probably direct staff to do things. We want it to be more formal in the discussion that we had this morning. So it's really just open it up again for discussions and anything that you would like to record as part of the minutes of this meeting for us to forward into our next steps.
Okay, thank you, Russell. We obviously had a pretty good discussion this morning. It takes time to work through these things, and obviously things you have given you direction on a number of things. Does anybody else want to make any comments in regards to this? Christine?
Are you needing a motion then for a report to come back to the next meeting that is based on the general discussion today, so it can be considered for a decision at that time?
That would be an appropriate
Happy to
response.
make
Okay, we have to move that. Is that part of the recommendations there? We're noting the report, provide direction on specific items to be included and excluded. First step.
That direction would be a report to produce, based on the discussions at the workshop, to be produced for the next RTC meeting.
Okay. So, sorry, okay.
I am being pedantic. I don't want to, I hate using the word recommend. Ours isn't giving direction necessarily, it's a recommendation because it will be to the next RTC. It is giving, we're given direction for the draft, or we're starting to develop it. But I would hope that this is seen as a process which is trying to assist the next RTC, not constrain it. And I know that's pedantic, but yeah, that's understood. Yeah.
Okay. Any more discussion on that? We have got two, obviously note the reports, but also to report based on discussion as Christine's
Report to the next meeting.
to report back to the next meeting. So Christine, you're obviously moving that. Phil, you're going to second that? We're all happy with that? Put that, all in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Yes, carries. It's good. Thank you. Right, we'll move on to item 9.2, summary of the Otago Southland expenditure. This is yours again, Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is just an update report to give you an indication of how our expenditure across the different road organisations, the road TAs and regional councils, is going as at the end of February. As much as anything to hopefully give you some assurance that the funding that is actually being allocated is actually also being used on the network. There is, if you look at it and say that we are at that time we were 66% of the way through the year, and many of those expenditure figures are not quite at 66%. In the roading situation or in the roading area in particular, the rehabilitations and reseals tend to happen through the summer months and through January, February, March, and sometimes into April. So, and that's a big chunk of the dollars. So at that particular point in time, it's not unexpected that their expenditure, it's not uniform through the year, is what I'm saying, and that by the end of June, there's nobody that's indicated to me that they're going to be significantly underspent.
Okay. Okay. Question.
Two questions. One was of the Otago State Highways, and I would think any person for the State Highway 7 being vastly improved in that time frame. But I'm just wondering where the numbers are, because it is good to see that investment, and if it's not in there, it has to come in sometime. That's all. I appreciate collating. That's probably quite hard. And the Queenstown one seemed the proportions are quite substantially less, and I appreciate there's a lot happening in Queenstown at the moment, and probably doing any road in Queenstown, like a Queenstown Lakes district. It's not just Queenstown. It's probably quite problematic doing some of the work, but I'm just wondering if that is a true reflection of whether comparatively it's much lower.
But probably also reflected in the capital works component of that will flow, that the funding will flow through into before the end of June.
Okay, that's a lot of work to come after February.
Yeah.
I was going to query that myself, but go back to the staff on that. But I do expect there's some capital projects in there that haven't been realised yet.
The state highway figures, I didn't get them in time to put in the agenda.
It'd be great to get them.
I have asked for them.
Yeah.
Just the Otago.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
by way of background, the figures that are in here come out of the claims that have been submitted by each of the group organisations as at the end of February, each of the TAs. The state highways, they operate on the same claim system, so it doesn't sit in transport investment online. So I have to go back to the likes of Chad, and then Chad has to go and ask questions and say, can you break out the figures out of the national ones for Otago and Southland? So we will have them at the end of June.
Oh, it's great to see this report.
Yeah, no, is there any other from other regions or anything, Christine?
I just wonder if it's useful just to have as an additional comment to say on track, that was save you explaining
Yeah.
each individual one. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? No, I'll note the report. Can I move it to note the report? Kate, seconder Christine, all in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. We'll move on to the Southland District Council bridge replacement. Hartley, are you?
Do you want
you
to
need
speak
this?
to this?
Either or.
Yeah, it's good. Your report.
Oh. Thank you very much. So yeah, at the last meeting, there was a request to bring sort of the Southern District Council's bridge program in essence to the committee. And this is what the report covers off. You'll see from the report it covers off basically our total bridge asset inventory broken down. Most of our bridges that are up for replacement are temporary timber structures. And based on our long-term plan for over the next 10 years, we have identified 134 bridges that come to the end of their useful life. And it works out to just over $5 million per annum that we need to invest to retain those structures. There's also a link in there that sort of highlights all our restricted bridges, which are the orange coloured dots, I suppose, for them. And then the red ones represent all the bridges that we currently have closed. So part of the reason for the closures, while there's still some closed, while we still might be replacing others, is just from a priority point of view, looking at aspects such as available detour and the length of available detour, and utilising that to help prioritise which structures should be replaced first or not. In some instances, there are routes that don't have any alternative options available, and so where that's the case, we're selected to prioritise those bridge replacement, or if there's a significant detour, sort of 15, 20 Ks, which we have had, that's good on a, say, a collector road, or primary road, and therefore replace those bridges prior to replacing the ones that do have alternative detours that might do a shorter length. Obviously appreciate the those bridges that are restricted. We inspect them on an annual basis, as well as those that might be of risk. So that is obviously subject to change through the next 3 years and next 10 years. So that's long and the short of it. Don't have to take any questions.
Okay.
Excellent report. Two questions. One is, how are you working with industry to work out the best model that works for them, appreciating that working with the community is also part of that, but it's not necessarily the complete answer. And secondly, no, I'll come back to that in a second.
So part of the consideration, I say, is the detour length, but also the type of vehicles that are utilised in those networks. So we use the road hierarchy as proxy because you can tell which percentage of heavies, and also by land use.
No, I meant with the building industry.
Oh,
Sorry, yeah, this is where I don't think we've connected up with Infrastructure New Zealand or whoever, and how we get the industries competitively looking at how to do this as a pipeline projects. Yeah. Sorry.
yeah, no, good clarification on the industry because so for our contracts, we've looked at design build contracts, particularly the smaller structures. So they are basically off-the-shelf designs that the industry is using. When we started identifying this as a long-term issue, I'll probably say 5 years ago now, maybe even longer, we actually engaged with a lot of the suppliers to find out what sort of bespoke operations. It could be what sort of contract models, etc. And how breaking up, say, or not breaking up, but how to procure and package together based on different suppliers and their capabilities. So one of the which works really well because they can then go do the design and deliver it within the time frame. Different supplier. And we've also looked at the size of the bridges, complexity of the bridges, because different suppliers are interested in potentially different size bridges because of their capability and capacity. So yeah, we engaged and basically packaged them up according to what the industry is telling us.
So that gave a really good picture. I'm just really interested in what the next step is, as I suppose it's a funding issue first, but it's if you were to present this to government as a resilience issue or to co-funders of any sort, is how or even to the community, is what that looks like, the efficiencies that you've driven, I suppose.
Yes, from a business point of view, I suppose looking at the impact that each closure or restriction might have and the costs associated, not just with the extra travel time, but the actual productivity. Because you could say, what else could you be doing with that time? Yes, it might be another 7 or 8 kilometres with travel time, but what does that actually equate to from a dollar point of view? So we've done some research on that too. We basically, over the next 3 years, are $15 million worth of renewals that we're putting for. In the course of 1 year, based on our restrictions, you'd make that savings. It's some work that great self done for us. So yeah, there's big savings to be had if you can get rid of restrictions.
Yeah, it's one example I know of $20,000 a year costs one farm because they were one bridge went out, and it's it adds up pretty quickly. But no, that's great, thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Can I, and it's not your issue, it's our issue.
Yeah.
But collectively, a brilliant report on what you're dealing with. Collectively as a region, how much more clout can we accumulate in the procurement space if we actually work collaboratively? Because I think we've all got bridges that are going to need to be replaced.
I'd say our biggest challenge at the moment is probably, and I've spoken about earlier today, is around the continuity of funding and setting up long-term assurance around funding, because that's what we found is with the last RLTP or funding round is that we got the last round of bridges developed, and now we've got this lull period before funding's, while it's been allocated, hasn't actually been approved, even though we've submitted a lot of business cases associated with the change in process, etc., slowing this down, which then makes the industry idle, sitting around. So a long-term program with long-term funding can allow, well, I believe, can allow for more efficient and effective delivery and and we talk about sustainability, a sustainable program where you don't have peaks and troughs.
I can add to that. When I look at this map, I know there's the Gore District Council and the Clutha District Council here. I take it we've got the same issues as we flow through there. It's all exactly the same issues. So we should be working, certainly, and that's where the amalgamation or cultural control organisations must be a priority into the future. But Christine and then Murray.
No, thank you. And I don't know what the influence again of this committee is, but when we put our application in for the bridging program some 18 months ago, was it? And we're still waiting to hear an outcome of all of those, or all of them, some 18 months later. I think that's what you're referring to by the impact of delay on costs and a number of other things. Yeah.
Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hartley, just a query, the 49 bridges that you've got indicated for replacement, how many of those bridges, or are any of those bridges classified as uneconomic in terms of being on a no exit road and not providing a public or very little public benefit?
We haven't got across all of them. We haven't done a full analysis, but there's definitely some of those that may or may not be uneconomic, but as a, I suppose, an indicator, out of our entire bridge network, we've got 22 that have a detour available of less than 5 kilometres, so it probably gives a bit of an indication of the length of the road or alternative access, if available, people would have to travel. But we can appreciate how poor them. It's a lot of bridges, so there's a balance between spending a lot of money up front, doing an economic analysis, when it might still be 2 or 3 years away.
Yeah, it is obviously we haven't got the number of bridges that you have, but it is a problem for us even on our smaller network, where we've got bridges that are we're unlikely to achieve NZTA funding for replacement. So we are having to have a look at alternatives such as maybe Fords. The other thing that I just wonder about from the Regional Transport Committee's point of view is, should we be looking, or should the committee be looking at lobbying government to put the bridge replacements and possibly structural component repairs for bridges into the pothole prevention category? That does in the latest GPS, the bridge replacements, or both bridge replacements and bridge maintenance and structural component replacements were all shifted into different categories, which attracted a lot lesser funding than bridge replacements did previously. And some of you may have heard my comparison before, but a collapsed bridge is a very large pothole. And it has exactly the same, or if not worse, consequence than a large pothole does. So it's an integral part of our network. So I think it might be worthy of an approach to the government for the future to restore it to where it should be. Currently, it's been shifted into the low cost, low risk improvements activity class, and where a bridge is just replacing like for like, it's no different from pavement rehabilitation, where you're just continuing the level of service that was provided previously, rather than competing in that low cost, low risk improvement category for a very limited pot of money in that activity class, where you're competing against some much busier networks for those improvement funds. And I just wonder whether it was a unintended consequence that needs to be strongly pointed out to the government.
So Russell, do you want to add to that?
It's not, thanks, Mr. Chair, not specifically adding to it, but I think perhaps a way forward in terms of Councillor Menzies' comments as well. I think that what this information has highlighted for me is that the rural councils across Otago and Southland have, I think you've all got bridge issues, and that for this combined committee, perhaps this actually would be a really worthwhile exercise to take this information, expand it across the combined regions, point out just how big the problem is. Then you can actually start talking at government level. You can start talking through the South Island RTC chairs, etc. But I think that we would then be demonstrating this is the whole of the Otago Southland region, and just how big the problem and the funding issue is for the future. And I think that would be quite a worthwhile exercise to do, so that we get a better understanding for everybody, and gives something for this committee to really. I mean, you could support the Southland districts here, and we could do that now. we could be asking NZTA, why is it taking so long? And we want them to report back on that for the approval of those bridges. That's a short-term one, but let's look at the longer term as well.
Well, I can just add just a quick question in regards on that. When I look at the information here, you go back 10 years, 20 years, you wouldn't have this information. Like it's collecting data on the bridges and or is this being there, but you know, it seems to be coming to hit a brick wall now, or and I suppose the other question is, what does 10 years look like if you don't get the funding? There'll obviously be a few more that'll start filling up the gaps in between that too, I take it. So obviously that I'm just saying the information must be a lot more accurate now, I take it.
First, yeah. I think that for the most part, a lot of that information has been there. Some of it stems around funding. Murray mentioned the uneconomic activity aspect of it, but also I suppose we, from that general asset management point of view and the long-term focus, 10 years and beyond. And we mentioned 134. There's a few that I look at the 10 years after that for the Southland District Council. Yes, we still do have bridges in there, but not nearly the same volume of bridges. The volume in itself is not necessarily indicated. There are a few big bridges coming up, 30-metre plus type bridges that we don't have. So I think part of it's been funding structure, drawing people's attention with more earnest towards what the problem is and the looming problem that's coming. And the same way we've done, say, a lot of work around the bridges, really, and the next problem is going to be around our sealed road network, the age of that, and increased capacity. So I think it's just trying to not look necessarily, as we spoke about this morning, the year and now. It's actually what's coming ahead of us and being aware of that.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Quentin?
Yeah, just one of the things we've encountered, I suppose, through the Edith Cavell Bridge project particularly, is that the capacity of local government to deal with bridges, and certainly on a larger scale, is quite, it's quite a specialist area, and it's I just wonder whether it's the most efficient way to run the bridge program, or whether NZTA or somebody else should take the lead on the bridges, including, we've talked about previously the fixed span bridges and Bailey bridges and stuff, expanding that model and going, well, surely there's some economies of scale, economies of design in terms of having a off-the-shelf solution and being able to deliver that centrally. I'm just not sure local government's very well placed to deliver this.
Okay.
We may not be well placed. I'm just wondering how we can get ourselves better placed. And part of that is, thank you for the suggestion, Russell, that we do this in Otago as well, or collaboratively together. The other way to do it is to say, well, Southland District have set themselves up really well here as a case study. Actually, what do the numbers and see their cost benefit ratios look like as a preempted, and get the methodology right at one council that we can then roll out much more easily. I think this is core functioning, Section 79, whatever it is, getting things in a better way that we can deliver bridge connections. And I think it's I'd like to see us be driving this. The question is, what's the technical best way of doing it? And I think having a case study may be the quickest way to do it, especially if you've already got money in your budget to do the first 3 years. And then we can check the methodology. Yeah. That is a question probably for Russell.
Yeah, okay. Just Joe's got his hand up. Joe?
Yeah, some of this is probably some things you should take up with Infrastructure New Zealand, because I remember it being brought up at a national conference last year where they're wanting the input from councils on a sort of national plan or national strategy.
Okay, thanks. Joe, sorry, just quickly, you had a question you want to bring up in general too. Thank you.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, I was just putting it in the comments here to be noted for later.
Yeah, hopefully we've picked up on that. All good. Is there an action or just a question you're asking of Kat in regards to what you just?
Well, no, the question is, what is the best methodology for going forward? Is it that we do this, put all the TAs through a relatively rigorous process? Some will be better at doing that than others. Or do we set up a case study of how to do it well and then almost copy and paste that as a methodology by all TAs? I'm just wondering, because I think that Southland are presenting a really compelling case that if we can get that in front of someone quicker than waiting, we may open the door to the other funding options.
Okay, sorry, Murray.
Thank you. I suppose there's two elements. There's one is from a full business case point of view, NZTA have the requirements around present value end of life calculations and economic activities, those sorts of things that have to be followed. I suppose the difference at the moment for us is compared to other roading activities where there's still some of similar type requirements, we can get on and deliver the program without getting first doing the paperwork, then submitting it, waiting for approval, then actually doing the work, which is the case with the bridges, and that's what's slowing us up. No issue with doing the economic aspect of it. It's just the approval status in between that seems to be slowing things up. So that should be potentially the same for any other local authorities, including and NZTA themselves. The value add, I suppose, is the learnings that STC can bring to the others around how we procure it, how we've determined our prioritisation, those sorts of aspects to it. To be fair for us, I'd say it's no different to repairing a road for us these days. Yes, the journey when we started off was a bit different, but the learnings we've had, it's just a day-to-day activity for us, or it has now become a day-to-day activity for us because we are doing so many of them we get approval on an annual basis.
Okay, thanks. Barry, do you want to add to that?
Yes, so the real crux of this problem is that the bridges that we're talking about are generally they're quite often the smaller timber bridges dotted around our networks. Were all constructed around about the same time, and they're failing or coming to the end of their useful life about the same time. So having been involved with this committee for many years, I know that this has been identified on the agenda of the committee at times in the past, but we have had the expectation that the government would, when we came to this crux point, the funding would be available to address the situation. And one of the other problems that we do have is that we don't want to replace those bridges too early and waste useful life of those bridges. It's similar to a reseal of a sealed road. You don't want to seal it too early because it's wasteful. So we've basically come to that point, but the funding has not matched the expectation, and that has put us in this invidious position. Going back to Kate's point about collaboration, it is something that we have had quite a bit of discussion with Southland District and partly. So we obviously have a much smaller bridge replacement program, but the only bridge that we've replaced in this current year was very much based on the template from STC. We've also considered participating even more intimately in contract packages that they are putting out. So those options are already things that we're considering, but it really comes down to that lack of funding or the reduction in funding is a big problem for all of us.
That's a good, Russell, just finish off.
Perhaps suggest two actions. One is, does this committee, do you want the committee to write to NZTA regarding the issues in getting funding approval?
Mm-hmm.
So that could be a resolution. The second one, that you could ask us to start to produce a large report that tells the more a story about the combined regions that you can take for further advocacy work in terms of funding to government or etc. So that to tell the story of the small bridge replacements, because that's primarily what we're talking about across the combined regions.
Look, wholly support your first point. The second point, you might want to consider the next RLTP. A really good process to have a focus on resilience of the bridge network, potentially, and pitch a case for that within that.
What I would say is we did that with Albert Town Bridge and it failed. So the resilience factor didn't resonate very well with Central, unfortunately, even though it was within the GPS and everything. So it's obviously it's the game we have to play, but it didn't get us there.
Okay. Chad, do you?
I've just chased up Hartley's money for the 3 years. It looks like it's been improved. So he's got his 15 mil, which is not bad, but it is sort of a long-term issue that we have to look at. And I suspect we have obviously funding constraints as well, because it all comes out of local road improvements. And we can only prioritise our bridges that are in a pretty bad state as well. So it's, you know, it's a local authority issue and an NCTA issue.
Yeah, Joe, have you got another question?
Yeah, no, just further to you sending an email to the NZTA, I suggest you include in that the National Infrastructure Commission, and also probably see in the Honourable Chris Bishop to it as well, so I can see that there is a need there for it.
Very good. So we've got a couple of actions and or recommendations there.
Yeah.
We've got them worded right.
And so just one other point, I sometimes find that you know, Joseph Mooney and Miles and that aren't always fully abreast of the need and demand. So I suppose that getting our MPs up to speed on these issues is really important as well. We might even invite them to an RTC or to a meet and greet or something, just to make the case for these things.
Agreed.
Good point. Can I just clarify what we are? You can note the report, but quickly writing.
No.
Would you like me to share a resolution?
Yes.
What would you like to type?
What is up there?
Have you got
the resolutions, or do you want us?
No, I haven't. I won't.
No.
Sorry. The committee direct staff to like NZTA concerning the delays in addressing approvals for the current bridging program.
It seems like that's no longer an issue.
Yeah, I was just going to say, is that
Rely on the minuted word.
I've just checked into TO and it's
yeah.
Yes. Money.
So, right.
So that's good. I guess overall it's the understand your issues, but the timeliness of a response on a long-term basis needs to improve in order to be able to allow us to do our work efficiently and effectively. And agree that the second action point, that we work collectively where possible across the TLA. So we've got that visual picture, I think, is really strong.
Yes.
If we have that across, it'll be valuable.
Sorry, I'm sorry, Chad, just quickly.
Just on the funding, it used to be part of M&O programs. We had fund bridge renewals as part of that program, which I think Hartley was trying to point at. This time around, the government said no, it has to come out of local road improvements and not an automatic, part of your allocation. So I think that's a potential, point of contention as well, as should it be part of your normal M&O renewal program.
Okay.
Well, look, I'm trying to, the resolution I think here just reinforces, and thank you, Chad, it's wonderful news, is that we've got a wonderful example here for a case study of what delays may look like as costs. And I think just building up what is already presented to us as a case study saying, this is what we had planned, the delays have cost us X, the industry hasn't been able to start, this and those sort of things. If the other TAs can come on board, fine, but I think beefing this report up with some of those costs in there and the cost benefit analysis that you've done, which I think is really important about how you prioritise and everything, will give us a much better baseline to then write to NZTA or to the Minister or to our local MPs. At the moment, we often rush off to tell people a story, but it's a half-baked story. And we actually haven't got the story well enough obviously told, and we have to make sure we can tell a story. Now, if you as TAG members think that you can all come up to the same speed that Southland is, a district council, fabulous. If you're not, why don't we just use Southland as a case study and beef it up a wee bit? It's almost there. I think it's a really good report, but I don't quite understand the prioritisation. I don't understand the cost benefit analysis well enough to say this is just a no-brainer. But every time government stops and take it, then send it to all of the MPs and say, this is the process problem that is stopping and costing the country. So let's make sure we've got our story to tell, and I don't think we're quite there yet.
So we're saying we're not going to cancel the NZTA at the moment.
Well,
Obviously come, but well, do you want to write just indicating, hey, this process is a bit slow on it, certainly, or is there two things there, or do you want to just focus on the second?
I want to know if all the other TAG members can get up to speed as quickly and as informatively. If you can't, are you happy for us to just work this up a wee bit better so we actually do have a story to tell?
Just wanted to ask a question. If we had unlimited pots of money, is your own affordability in place? Can you afford it yourselves to replace every bridge you have, or is there a bigger discussion around affordability for both you and us?
The quick answer is no.
Yeah, from a holistic program point of view, not just bridges, our entire roading program, no, we do not have the total from an affordability, the ability to afford our entire program to maintain our current level of service. To be fair, for our bridge program, for the next 3 years, we not quite received all the funding allocation we requested, but it was really close, 90, I can't remember the exact percentage, 96 or 98%. So from a rating point of view, our elected members and through our long-term plan consultation elected to rate for a higher level of program than what we got allocated. So the final program that Southland District submitted was around 147 million over 3 years, and that's what we've rated to match the funding for that, but we only received 125. So in essence, we are just collecting reserves for available funding should it come from either NZTA or other sources.
Okay. Just trying to put something. Russell?
Screen up there.
Yeah.
And Southland District Council.
And STC, yeah. Southland District Council. So that's where we're at.
I think it's the cost benefit effects of the investment and the costs of delays.
Yep.
And you're going to bring it back to us as an.
Come next meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it comes back, then we've got a case study that we can then say what we're going to do with it.
Okay. Got those two. If there's no more discussion, someone happy to move that. There's nothing. Yeah. Bruce. And seconder. Okay.
Sorry, Finn, do you want to?
No, no, it's
do you-
Okay.
Oh, you want to appreciate the support. I'm happy to. I like you.
Yeah. Oh, do you want who? Yeah,
Good to
Christine.
have Southland
Christine,
on
sorry. Christine is seconder. And no, just get more discussion. We had good discussion. Thanks really for this, because this sort of expanding on some things in due course too. But it's given us good indication. I'll put that all in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Right. Thanks, guys. Right, move on to 9.4. Decision on petition from the New Zealand Equestrian Advocacy Network. Lorraine, you're going to lead us with this. Hopefully everybody's read the Definitely.
Yep, the committee will remember that we had a presentation, public deputation from the Equestrian Advocacy Network at the meeting in November. And they asked for the committee's support on their letter of petition. And we've had a close look at it. We're mindful that they noted that a number of regional councils did support the petition. When we looked at it closely, we sort of identified there's 6 asks in the petition, and some of them have a greater or less effect on what at an operational level for the various district and councils across the regions. So we've sort of indicated some support in part, and then the support is set out on page 23 of the agenda across we're calling the 6 asks of the petition. Essentially 1 and 3 and 6 are support, and then 2, 4, 5 support in part. Hopefully we've read it all, but they're set out in the little paper.
Thanks for that. Has anybody got any questions? Jim and Kate?
Just a question, when we talk about all vulnerable road users, we're talking about those idiots on 2 wheels, are we? Sorry, Kel.
And children. And wheelchairs. I'm happy to move option 2, including horse riders.
Anybody else? I know I was reading through it. Oh, sorry. No, carry on, Quentin.
Sorry, I was just gonna ask. I was just trying to understand the extent to which there's an evidence base for the issues that are raised or not. And yeah, I suppose it does touch on collecting data and things like that. And I know that I'm just concerned that sometimes there's a perceived issue more than a real one.
Thanks for that. Is there data, well, there will be data, I take it, in regards to incidents with horses and things on roads?
Yeah, look, I can speak to that slightly because I've had some involvement with this in a different forum. Part of the challenge around the CAS system, which records our crashes, is that it's very much dependent on a vehicle impacting something to cause the injury. So, for example, if a car was to go too close to a pedestrian, or a horse rider, or a cyclist, and go past them and not strike them, and the person then fell and sustained a head injury, that would not be recorded in the crash analysis system because there's been no vehicle impact. So there is at the moment, in terms of the traffic crash reports that the police take, there is the ability to indicate that there's an equestrian involvement, but it's very much dependent as well on the police writing that up at the time, I think. So we can certainly find serious and fatal crashes that have involved a horse rider that's been struck in the system.
Even through ACC and things like that, the records of any incident, injury involving horse, should be written all up properly.
Yeah, so that's part of the bigger problem in that the hospital records, the ACC records, and the crash system don't always correlate
to each other.
For that very reason.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
I suppose there's some uncertainty if it causes injury to an animal, for instance, that obviously wouldn't get picked up by ACC or anything like that. So.
Okay, seems to be Jim.
So, sorry, just a question of Councillor Wilson. Did you say that you were prepared to move option 2?
Yes.
Well, I'd be prepared to second option 2, if that's the case.
Okay. Back to my yeah, sorry, I'll get with you. I'm on the page.
Sorry, can I just check with staff? I think that was sort of the recommended one as with more nuance than just accepting it. But,
Yeah, that's correct.
yeah.
Okay. Rightio. Well, I've got a mover and seconder. Oh, sorry. Cool. No, all good.
Sorry, itching my forehead.
Okay. Just answer to make sure I don't miss anyone. No, well, I've got a mover and seconder for option 2. If there's no more, that is the supporting part. So make that recommendation. I'll put that as all in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Yeah. Carried. Thanks for that. Right, move on to 1.5. ZTA report.
Might, with your permission, put something on the screen and then
Absolutely.
come back and talk to it.
If Russell wants to have someone to help me with the techniques.
In his defense, it was working properly there, just not.
Just not sure how we can switch it.
So you're trying to, what are you trying to say?
No, I don't, I want the others. Oh. I just want to show this full on the screen.
So you want to do a slide?
Yeah.
Managed to freeze it.
So something blue flare. Before the Canadian can go into us. Exports. So my second study it was working fine before.
We did have a dry run through of this at lunchtime and it was all really good. Idiot proof. You pressed the wrong button.
Just building expectation.
See.
And presumably you've got the first 3 years for the next test.
Just put that box in.
Yeah. Yeah, it depends if the farmer's straddling both sides, but it is. You can. Yeah.
With your permission, Mr. Chair, the report covers a number of topics. What I might do is just take questions after each topic, so you don't lose the place.
Good.
Is that too far away? Yeah. Okay. Right, I'm just going to run through a number of topics for the committee. We've had a reasonably big maintenance season where we've done over 2,000 lane kilometres over the summer, and we've got some activities that are still continuing just into that sort of shoulder autumn season, but they're mostly AC works, so we're less worried about them being temperature dependent. The amount of work we've done this year has been similar to previous years. The big difference this year is we've done far more of that road rehabilitation or road rebuilding work. And what that's going to start to demonstrate is a bigger network long-term gain, because that's the strength of the pavements that we're now starting to do some work on. I'm already starting to see some benefits with that in the likes of Northland, Central Waikato and Taranaki. The ability to do the reasonably big programme and the road rehabilitation has really been aided by the fact we've had a good summer, which has been something we've been able to take advantage of across the country, even though Dunedin seems to have rained quite a bit. Part of this year has been a strong focus in making sure that we try and minimise disruption as much as possible. So we've tried to avoid doing works around the holiday or the peak sort of tourism hotspot times of year. Where we have ended up with quite disruptive work, like State Highway 1 on the Desert Road, we've made a big effort to sort of communicate that. So we've had closures in place. We've worked hard at those kind of things. So we're now into the winter season, and we're starting to look a little bit more at the activity that we've got to do over that period. One of the things that we're not going to back off on, which we have talked a bit about today, is the pothole programme. So we're still on a 24-hour pothole watch, and that has been challenged certainly in Canterbury last week with that wet weather they had, because we ended up with quite a few potholes coming up in certain sites. There's obviously going to be a range of other activities that we'll start to get into, because we'll now get into the wetter months and we'll start to experience snow and ice as well. So it's just bearing in mind with that. But our suppliers are reasonably well placed in the moment to respond to big events. In the winter period, the other thing that we're going to do is roll out the risk-based approach to traffic management across all of our contracts. So by 1 July, I think we'll have that embedded within all of our existing contracts, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And the other thing that we're doing alongside all of this is obviously we're switching to the new integrated delivery contract model. So that's in an RFI process at the moment. We expect to have all those contracts in place by April next year. And the 14 networks that we've got tendered awarded prior to Christmas. So it's just a bit of a watch this space with that. Any questions on the minutes? We'll just keep going. Yep. Okay. National ticketing, it's taken a little bit slower than we previously planned. We've done a bit of pilot work on Route 29 in Christchurch, which is basically to roll out the contactless system so you can pay with your credit card. That's been really seamless. So we've had more than 15,000 transactions on that since the start of it in December. Hasn't caused any problems. It's been well communicated, well taken up. I think probably has exceeded everybody's expectations. We are working hard with our supplier to refine and test that wider solution. So there's still a number of defects in play with that, and we're not quite where we wanted to be with that. So there is a process that we're going on at the moment to rejig what the full rollout would be and make sure we get the time frame for that right. But we're really keen to ensure that we don't bring out a product that's glitchy from the get-go. So that's part of what we're ensuring at the moment, is actually the defects are worked through in that. But we realise that is going to have some impact on the PTAs.
So, look, that's great. I'm just wondering, as much as the debit or credit card is great, it doesn't give you the data that a B card or the National Ticketing Solutions would, a motor card, motor move would give. And I'm wondering if it's working, is there any incentive or any way of trying to move people to motor move cards when it does work, or is it this cost neutral?
No, so the moment you've got a plethora of cards, so you've obviously got B and Otago and Metro and Christchurch, etc. So the idea really is to bring contactless on in parallel initially.
Yeah.
And then what you can do with that is then bring Motor Move on as a complementary card to contactless and look to transition off your current cards.
Mm-hmm.
That's still, neither of those options give you the data. All it does is it push you onto a different payment process, essentially. The challenge a little bit with it is that everybody runs a different concession process. So every PTA has got a number of concessions over their system, and those concessions have to be available both on the contactless credit card system and on the Motor Move card system. And the final stage of that is when you go to tag on, tag off, is when you really unlock the data.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think there's a staged approach to it where you bring in credit cards first, then you bring on Motor Move, which then allows you to phase out your Metro cards and your B cards. And then the last step in that is you put the brain into the system, essentially, which is you allow tag on, tag off, and that suddenly gives you your occupancies and your on and off the fleet.
Mm.
Good.
I think we're missing a lot of data in that process, and the idea of making it either concessions should be made the same right across the country to enable that, which makes it a lot more intuitive if we're going to be using the cards nationwide, and that would make a lot of decision making a lot easier. With all respect, otherwise it's just so fraught. And yeah, council's changing it at one. Concessions.
Well, the legislations at the moment enables PTAs, the individual regional councils, to set their own fare structures and concessions with that. So there's no, I'm not aware that there's any process in place at the moment to look at a nationally consistent approach to that, but we have been doing some work with the PTAs recently around the private share and looking at a cost comparison between different PTAs.
Okay, we'll carry on here.
Safety cameras. So you'll be aware that the NZTA is taking over the safety camera program from police. There's 4 types of safety camera that you just need to be aware of. There's obviously fixed cameras, there's your mobile cameras. We're going to have in the fixed as well, we're going to have point to point. We'll talk a bit more about those in a minute. And eventually we'll have some red light cameras, which will both pick up red light running and speed through intersections. So we have 51 fixed cameras proposed, 24 in operation already, 27 to come. Of those 27 to come, we are going to prioritise point-to-point cameras. So point-to-points are essentially average speed over a section of road. And that can vary from a number of kilometres up to tens of kilometres, essentially depending on where they're appropriate to put. The reason that we're keen on point-to-point cameras is they've got a really high DSI reduction compared to the other types of cameras. So for example, I think a point-to-point gives you a 48% DSI reduction, whereas a static camera on its own would only give you around about a 20% DSI reduction. And partly that is that people get used to where statics are, they slow down coming into the camera and then speed up going out of it, whereas a point-to-point actually works over a length. Point-to-points are a new thing for New Zealand. So there are, there's other jurisdictions in the world use them, like Australia and the UK make use of point-to-points quite effectively, but they're going to be a new thing for us. So at the moment, we're just working through serving 12 locations throughout New Zealand to see whether or not they're suitable for point-to-point cameras, and trying to have discussions with the relevant mayors and chief executives of the councils just to say, hey, be aware there's some survey work coming, and just to see whether the cameras might work in this place and get some feedback from them. And we've got 4 sites in the South Island. We've had 3 of those discussions, and unfortunately haven't had the discussion with DCC yet. And lo and behold, our survey work has commenced at between East Tyree and Waihola, I think, on that. So
Makes sense.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
right.
that's what's going on with that.
Be careful, boys, on the way home.
Well,
Wrong way up.
yeah. So at the moment, we're surveying to test whether or not, point to point could be valid there. We've also got discussions with the obviously the local councils to say whether there's anything we should be aware of, or that would either preclude it happening, or something else that's coming that might negate the need to do it.
The statistics hopefully will.
Well, the statistics
Yeah.
from a paper-based exercise
Yeah.
have supported looking where we're looking
Yeah.
to start with. Yeah. We'll be responsible for speed cameras from the mobile cameras from July. What you'll see is a change to that in that the police have predominantly just used vehicles. We're going to use vehicles and trailers for that. And obviously those are the new trailers that you're starting to see doing some of the survey work. While we're picking up the cameras from police, we'll still be working strongly with them around enforcement. So they're not going to stop enforcing the speed limit in their traffic patrol activities. And we're also going to work closely with the RCAs to make sure that where we do put these point-to-points and the other statics, we're getting the best outcomes in terms of the DSIs. We've gone for a provider for our mobile cameras, so we're going to use a company called Census Limited. Their contract is for speed detection only, and it's based on the number of hours of mobile camera that they have operating. They receive no incentive to put cameras and get more tickets. And the money from safety camera fines goes straight to the government consolidated fund. So the transport agency, while we're looking after the cameras, don't receive anything from it. A Census are only responsible for providing images to us. So the NZTA essentially is the clearinghouse for enforcement. So the Census don't do any personal ID. That's all something that NZTA will do in-house and then issue the enforcing tickets. So there's a few changes coming in this space. I think it's good news. We've got more tools that we can use, and point-to-points, once we get them in, should be significantly effective on some routes. Any questions?
Questions? Yeah, just interesting, because I read on Facebook about 3 weeks ago, someone questioning their camera setup and whether it was a point-to-point thing. So it doesn't take them long to figure it out, does it?
No.
No.
It depends on how many tickets are issued, actually. They worked it out.
But at the moment it's not. So all they're doing at the moment is surveying to see whether it's the location's suitable. So it's not there as an enforcement rule.
This was on a Waihola
site. Yeah.
Right.
My question's just been answered, so.
Okay. Is any questions? No, that's all good. Carry on.
Okay, we're just about to hit Road Safety Week next year in 2025. So it's going to go from the 12th to the 18th of May. The NZTA are a partner with Becca and Break are the organisation who are delivering that. So we're just sponsoring it. And the theme this year is to be a road safety hero, which is really to try and celebrate those who are already involved in this space and doing really good things. And there's also going to be a focus on vulnerable road users, which is quite interesting given the last item, which ties in quite strongly with the UN Global Road Safety Week. At the same time, they've got a focus on vulnerable road users. So last year we had more than 1,200 organisations signed up to it. The predominant amount of those were schools and kindergartens, but there were some councils and other organisations within the mix of it. This year, we're trying to get more businesses and community groups involved in it as well. And you will see around the country, by way of promotion for it, a few things going on. So the colour to promote Road Safety Week this year is yellow. So for instance, you'll see the Auckland Harbour Bridge and some other New Zealand icons lit up in yellow throughout Road Safety Week, just to raise the prominence of it, really. And In conjunction with it, there'll be quite a bit of work done with the schools and a road patrol superhero day.
Any questions? Right. Okay.
Okay. Send release. So May the 1st was the deadline for road controlling authorities to supply a list of specified roads to NZTA, which was an indication of the roads that they were going to reverse. The 1st of July is the deadline for the reversals to be implemented this year. And the 1st of July next year for the variable speed limits outside school gates that aren't part of the reversal consideration. We're dealing with a fair amount of queries and requests as a result of this. So if you're asking questions through our contacts, just bear with us. We will get to you. We haven't forgotten about you. And we know that the minister's also advised at this point in time that he's not going to make further changes to the rule. So some RCAs have made requests of him already. Under the new rule, something to be aware of, a council can initiate a review on the local roads. So you can, if you've had a speed limit that's subject to an auto reversal process, go through a review. You just have to meet the requirements of that review. So if you are going to look at that, we'd encourage you to look at Schedule 3 of that. The interesting thing with that is that how the legislation's kind of set up is you still have to go through the auto reversal, and then you put it, if you get through the review successfully, then you can revert the speed. So in theory, if you could make the review timelines, you could auto reverse at midnight on the 1st of July, and 1 minute past midnight go back to what your reviews said. I mean, but there is a process that has to happen because it's legal. As we already discussed, councils can submit for funding under the low cost, low risk in support of that, but it doesn't quite deal with the whole cost as Southland have indicated. We are trying to batch up the approvals and do them in batches every 1 to 3 months. It's just the volume that we're trying to deal with. So bear with us. We haven't been forgotten in the system. And if you do get in touch, I'm pretty sure we'll be able to tell you where you are in that process. Non-compliance. So the NZTA's got 2 roles in this. Obviously, we've got a road controlling authority responsibility for the state highways, but we're also the regulator for the rule. So we're the one that's got to ensure that compliance is happening. So there's some requirements in the rule for RCAs to notify us if they're not going to comply. And then we've got to then reply to that and give the RCA some opportunity to respond to that. If the RCA still chooses not to comply at that point, the NZTA then might exercise powers of the RCA to affect the speed limit under the rule. So there's a nudge in there that if the council chooses not to comply with the requirements of the rule, there's a process where we're going to try and talk to each other and get an explanation. If we're not happy with that explanation, NZTA may exercise the power then to take over and implement the rule. And I suppose that will be tested at some point potentially. The only other thing in this space at the moment is obviously Movement had put a High Court injunction in place to pause the speed limit rule. And my understanding is there's a judicial review, so that their first chance of that didn't get where they wanted to go. There's a judicial review happening later this year. In the meantime, the speed limit stuff carries on, and we can't comment about the judicial review process. That's the first part of it. Any questions around that?
Any questions?
No.
That's that.
Okay. So we're on to the second part, which really relates to the state highways in Otago and Southland and what happened around the reversals for that. So we had 2 in that process, whereby the public were required to indicate their support or not. And there was a very simple hard line for whether or not that met threshold. So in this instance, the public wasn't supportive of the State Highway 1 south of Glenavy, which is currently at 80 kilometres per hour. That will revert to 100 kilometres per hour before or by 1 July 2025 at the moment. And we will update our website on that change once the legal implementation date's been confirmed. The opposite to that was in the case of State Highway 94, which goes in to Milford from Tiana. The public was supportive of retaining the 80 kilometre per hour reduced speed limit there, so we won't be changing it.
Okay.
So let's go back to Glenavy. Can we just understand, Glenavy goes over the bridge to the south of Glenavy, there's the,
Waitaki Bridge Village.
yeah. So, but where is the 80 k's? Is it on the south side of the bridge or the north side of the bridge? Because that actually is quite important, given that bridge.
I can confirm that later.
Yeah.
I'd take a guess and I'd probably get it the wrong side.
You know, that's fine, because I know it extended a long way down, but I think there was something in between as well. Sorry.
We also want to point out, look, this process around the reversals was, it's an unusual process for us. So it's unlike the process now for speed limit reviews, in that it was very much a vote that was designed, but the majority of voters determined the outcome potentially with the reversal. So speed limit reviews, as have been done in the past, will have community and stakeholder feedback, and that will be considered alongside safety and technical data. So there's a broader process for speed limit reviews, both for ourselves and for councils. So this was a one-off, the speed limit reversal process.
And just ask you a question here.
Yep.
Just in regards to, when public was not supportive of retaining the 80K, do they know if it was local public or?
Well, this is the
or the outside people just travelling through, from the safety side of things?
That was challenged in Glenavy's case because it's a small population. So you could have had every man, woman and child and vote one way within that, and then the balance of the road users be happier with a higher speed and vote against that. So you didn't have this true balance between local community, and it was very much a mixture of local community and users in the vote, and then it was a fixed percentage.
So in regards to that, you could have people sitting in Auckland going, "Oh, we hate speed limits, we'll vote against," as in dictating a bigger part.
Well, yes, in theory, yeah.
Mandating the government, all these things come into play, and locals don't get a chance to.
Yeah.
Can't stand up against it. No, just out of interest. Yes.
Okay, I might go to the next slide. It's probably worth just talking a little bit about future reviews and where we are, because we've obviously got quite a bit on in the speed limit space. So our priority, obviously, up until now has been to get through these speed limit reversals because they were time bound. So from a legal point of view, we just had to get through them. The next priority now will be to look at the speed limits outside, the variable speed limits outside schools. So we've got to get those in place as well. And we've also got some projects which are dependent on speed management proposals, which include some of the intersection speed zones that IS sets. So a good example of that would be Rikaya North. We've got a vehicle testing centre going in, and we've got a speed limit intersection, which is the old signs, which, well, I should say not the old signs, but the signs which basically, if you've got somebody coming in and out of a side road or an area, force vehicles on the main road to slow down to indicate. We are aware that the community are requesting speed limits changes, and those are going to be added to the speed limit register, and they will be considered between now and 2027. They have to be aligned with the rule, obviously, and we've got the challenge for us at the moment is both a capacity and a funding point of view. So we can't fund within this NLTP all the requests that we've got within the register. So we will have to work through the register and prioritise both the staff capacity we've got and the funding we've got in this NLTP as we go through the community reviews. That shouldn't stop communities putting reviews into the register though, because it's important that the ones that we can't get through here from a funding point of view, we line up well for the next NLTP, which is only a year and a half away. So it's just a bit of a flag on that. In the longer term, targeted speed management will still be considered as part of the programme, and we will look at putting speed limits and funding for that into the 2027 NLTP. So it's a bit of a nudge to go, by all means, if you've got a community that are keen on a speed limit review, get the information to us and we will get it into the register. We will be looking to sort of prioritise that and get through what we can manage from a capacity and funding point of view, this NLTP. And then it places us well to have a good ask into the next NLTP. Any questions?
Any questions in regards to that, Mark?
Yeah, just on that, we, for instance, Gore and Matera have both requested reduction in speed at the approaches to both townships. And you've just advised that there's very limited capacity within NZTA to be able to process those. Is there any assistance that we can provide in our requests to expedite those requests, or is there something you guys could send out to us, to TLAs, that provides a template that would expedite the process and allow you guys to allow NZTA to increase the volume of requests that are able to be processed by limited resources?
I think what we might do, because part of this is we've got a couple of bits of work that we're doing just now with the reversals and the school stuff, and then some of the project specific work as well. We will have to get in and have a look at what that prioritised process looks like and that list within that. And I think once we've got that, if Matara or Gore were in those, then we would be coming back and saying, let's try and get them lined up. So I think with your permission, Mr. Chair, we might come back to a future RTC and just give a bit of an update on where the community register of speed limits is in the prioritisation process.
That'd be good.
Okay, might go to the next slide. Like I said, the next GPS isn't far away, so we are about to start working with the Ministry of Transport on the 2027 GPS. That is going to require us to request some information. So we've already been engaging with the Reg leadership team and TSIG around sector involvement with this. We think we will draw initially most of our information out of the current RLTPs, your RPTPs and your AMPs. But it might well mean that we need some additional information. Our timelines on this are quite tight, in that we expect to have an initial response of information required by September 2025. So we might come and knock on your doors and go, we just need some updated information in these areas, with a more robust version due by February 2026. So this is actually going to happen quite quickly in the next few months. And we'll be clear about if we want any information as soon as possible, because we realise our time frame to feed it in is tight, and putting you under a tight time frame as well doesn't help. So it's just a bit of a heads up that this is about to start kicking in, and we might well come back to you on your councils for some information.
Okay. Okay.
Just going back to our discussion in the workshop this morning, about the possibility of advocating for a change in activity class for the likes of bridge replacements. Does that mean we need to have that to NZTA before by September 2025 for it to be considered for the 2020 GPS 2027?
I think there's two things. I think part of the the thing that we wanted to make sure that we got right quite quickly was to try and understand what the committed base should be. So that's partially looking at what's the amount of funding needed to maintain the system. And I think there's something in that, Murray, that you probably, there's a bit of a nudge in it. We might come back to at the end with a suggestion that you might want to not take from me, but see if somebody else wants to put up. Because the base is around making sure we've got enough funding in the maintenance space to ensure that the transport system's resilient. The good work we've started to do and you've started to do with your road rebuilding and your reseals, we don't go back on that. So we maintain what's indicated in your EMPs. We know we changed the activity classes, Chad had said, around the bridges. And so it's getting best dressed with those is still a need. So there is something in that space to make sure that flags, I think.
That does lead to another question in the GPS and in publications since then. There's it seems to be a requirement for TLAs to reseal 9% of the sealed network, existing sealed network for each network, and 2% rehabilitation of each network. Now, we have been collecting evidence through high-speed data and other condition ratings that, and then modelling that with the likes of DTIMS, which gives an indication that the 5% that we're targeting at the moment for reseals and the 0.1% for rehabs is about right. So it means that we're going to be forced to and I suspect a lot of other networks are in the same boat, are going to be forced to prematurely carry out some of those works at double the cost. So from $1.5 million for reseals to $3 million overnight for no benefit supported by evidence.
I suspect that's not the case, but I might ask Chad if he's got a better insight on it.
We need to know how flexible those targets are. They don't they're set in stone, are they? Like, there still has to be a fit for purpose application to your individual network. I would have thought they're a target.
Yeah, at the moment, the GPS and other publications give the appearance that they are set in concrete. So it would be good to get some clarification on that, because it's going to have a huge impact on the affordability for some networks. Some networks may already be doing that, but where there's evidence showing that is not required, it would be good to get some confirmation before the GPS.
Keep moving.
Yep. Okay, emergency works. We did a bit of a review on it. The NZTA board has decided at this point in time not to make any changes to the enhanced funding assistance rates for emergency works for the more frequent and larger events, which is good news. We will be having a bit of a think about how we incentivise yourselves and us, I suppose, to invest in maintenance and resilience programmes into the 2027-30 NLTP. So we've talked a bit about that today. We're also going to work with MOT on the GPS for 2027, and it's likely to be revisited in that period. So at the moment, far substantially as is for this NLTP period, but it's not going to stay that way. I think at some point we will have to review it. It's just worth noting that there was some feedback provided in the consultation when we went out around this, and there's been some minor tweaks in the emergency works investment policies. Don't ask me what they are, but you can go onto our website and see what those are, essentially. So it's just a heads up on that. Any questions?
So as South Island Regional Land Transport Committees, if we combined the GPS stuff, it's not emergency works, no, it's not GPS generated. I'll ask that question different, sorry.
It's about resilience.
Okay, we'll go on to the next slide. Just a bit of an update on the projects that are underway in state highways in Otago and Southland. So we've got a couple in Dunedin. So NZTA has got the State Highway 1 and 88 business cases underway, and these are designed to really support the successful integration of the new hospital within Dunedin City, improve access in some targeted locations, and improve or maintain the efficiency of the one-way pair corridor throughout Dunedin. So we're currently consulting on some safety improvements at Pine Hill, Great King Street, and the wider corridor out to Anderson Bay Road State Highway 1 intersection, but not the hospital section. So we're going to do that as a separate component, and I think we're about to go to start some consultation.
Hoping for June, yeah.
So the second phase, the bit around the hospital really is looking at that east-west State Highway 88 connection, north of Frederick Street, the turn movements at St Andrews Street, and if we move the State Highway 88 to Frederick Street, then obviously there's a ping back of Anzac, the Anzac component of State Highway 88 to Dunedin City, so there'll be a replication of that. So the consultation at the moment, as Charlie says, planned for the end of June on that. In Queenstown, we've got a couple of things underway. So we've got stage 1 of the Queenstown package underway, which is the 660 intersection and the bus hub. It's now in construction, so that's good, and that's going to enable buses to travel more quickly and reliably through the most congested part of the network. And it's also going to allow us to do some work on State Highway 6 and the Howard's Drive intersection to upgrade that to provide some connectivity into the Ladies Mile area. The remainder of the package of projects within the Queenstown Transport Business Case are currently unfunded, which includes the wider Franklin Flats programme and bus lanes within it, and signalising 4 intersections. So they are listed as possible within this NLTP, which inevitably means they won't be funded in the 24-27 period. So there's a bit of work to do to see what we can line up for the next NLTP period on that. And the last one is Matara, which is just worth a few minutes. It's been something we've dearly wanted to get into for a fair period of time. So we were finally on track to deliver it this year, but it's problematic. So let me explain. The project's got 4 components to it, essentially. There's a Kiwi Rail track upgrade project. There's an intersection upgrade project, which we were going to do. Kiwi Rail had got a signals upgrade project, and then we had some resurfacing work around the intersection that the NOC were going to do. The challenge a little bit is both the Kiwi Rail track work and their signals work can proceed without the NZTA doing any work. Our work, however, cannot proceed unless Kiwi Rail do their work. And the challenge that we've got with this is that we now have funding for our work and thought that Kiwi Rail had lined up funding for their work, only to chase them and find that they have no funding allocated in the RNIP to do either their track improvement work or their signals work. So we are just continuing discussions with Kiwi Rail on that at the moment, because we can't commence our work unless they're in a position to do their work. So it's somewhat frustrating because it's been a project the community have wanted for a long time, and I'm not able to respond to it at the moment.
So any indication of when are they going to get their A&G then?
Well, they haven't got anything in this RNIP, and if they're in a similar situation with this NLTP, there's a risk that it flows into the next 3-year period. And then there's a risk to us because we've got funding in this period. So it's just to make you aware of the situation.
So the RNIP that you're referring to, does it align with the same 3-year funding cycle that the lead transport funding?
I'll double check on it. I think yes is the answer.
I missed that, Murray. Sorry.
Sorry, the Kiwi Rail, does it align with the same 3-year cycle that we have for land transport funding?
Yes.
Am I correct that it came out after though? The national.
It should have come out about the same time.
And how could a government, I mean, can we just as a RTC just put this to the minister and to the South Island MP, an MP minister for the South Island, just saying, best of intent, there's something seriously wrong in this process, that you've funded something that is subject to something that hasn't been funded. I mean, something that clear and direct. There's something wrong with the systems that does that. I mean, I'm happy to move along that line that we advocate.
For me,
I'll second that.
Yeah. It's unbelievable in the modern day world when you have that sort of money being involved. You can't get two outfits to work together.
the reality is that, you know, this carries on. I mean, I'm surprised nobody has been injured or killed. Children at rigs going past primary schools. There's only going to be more rigs on the road. We're talking about production. We're talking about all these things. And I think I heard in the first 9 years when I first thought this is a good idea. Look, it's sorted. And there's still something, not, you know, I'm saying NZTA's got it, but we're on the same boat. Really put some efforts. When someone gets killed, injured there, someone's going to have their pants. They're going to get a little spanked, I'd say. Yeah, this is pretty sad to hear that.
To keep the RTC updated. And there's a solution to it.
Yeah.
Well,
right.
Yeah, I was just going to say, well, in your letter to them, you say you're putting the other party on notice that any accidents that occur on the current section is now because of them delaying this project.
Yes.
Because the health and safety thing takes a big swing in the grand scheme of things these days.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll thanks, Joe. We will investigate what's going on and we'll make something. We'll certainly look at it. We've got to do something about that. Talk to the parents at least.
Can we just clarify who is we and what are we doing?
We're not doing anything. We haven't done a resolution yet. This is a report.
Right.
Yeah, sorry.
Just asking questions.
So just saying we will
Russell, sorry, I don't.
Hiding under the table.
We'll wait until the end and then we'll.
Can we have an action point? That's what I say, and I would suggest.
Okay. Right. Our last item really was the offer for James to come back to you and give you a bit of a deeper dive into the NZG TTM space. So we've just got a few slides to.
Which means New Zealand?
New Zealand Guide to Temporary Traffic Management. So we are looking to roll that out on all our existing contracts by 1 July 2025. And we've already initiated a process where any new infrastructure contracts have had to have that in place as of 1 November 24. So we are looking at the moment with that around what that means in terms of delivering our RCA function, which means that we'll only be looking at risk-based applications from 1 July 2025 onwards, essentially with this. And we're going to continue some discussions with our suppliers over the coming weeks to ensure that we hit that 1 July 2025 deadline. Next slide. So we've got a number of areas that you can get resources from this. So it's not just NZTA, but we've also got WorkSafe, we've got Civil Contractors New Zealand, and we've got the TTM Industry Steering Group. So if you want to find out more about how everybody's approaching it and get into that, there's a number of resources that you can pull on for it. What we thought would be useful to the, so just click forward a couple of slides. What we thought might be useful to the RTC was just to give you a bit of an example as to how we've applied it, and then show you a short video about the process. So we just want to quickly sort of talk you through, we've applied this new approach to Turangi to Lauri. This is a vital transport project that connects communities, businesses, and freight routes. Plays a vital role in everyday travel. Before the upgrades, the road had faced significant congestion, accident risks, and aging infrastructure. So the outcomes we really wanted from this was obviously improved safety, efficiency, and resilience is our top priority out of this corridor. And safety was one of the biggest challenges with the road, because it's got a combination of high-speed zones, limited passing opportunities, and unpredictable weather. So our goal really with the improvements we did with this was to do them in a way that minimized disruption to the road users, which is part of the reason to use this new approach to TTM. And the outcome for this in terms of the road was around putting in better road surfaces, safety barriers, improved flow, and reduced accident risk. So innovation really has played a big part in how we've approached the TTM in this, and this is what we really want to show you and talk to you about very briefly. There's two standout innovative processes that we've run with this process. We've reduced the I suppose an E-series trial on it, and we've also brought out an auto cone deployment truck, and we've got a video in a minute which will show you both of those things. So the brilliant thing about these is instead of having workers in the live traffic zone, we've got a machine that's essentially standing where the worker would do or deploying stuff, where workers would typically have harnessed themselves and held off the back of a truck. We've now got trucks that can deploy and retrieve cones automatically, which is quite a cool space. And what that's done is allowed us to take our teams out of the way and then use closures effectively to get a whole heap more work done. So actually by having full closures on bits of road at certain times has allowed us to get in and manage a workspace without live traffic through the environment. And allowed us to do a whole heap of other things than we just typically go in if we were trying to work within that environment. So the easiest way to probably demonstrate this is just to show you a short video for the next 3 minutes if we can get it to play. Here's the hoping, right?
So the T2W project spans approximately 220 kilometres from Poreri roundabout in the north to Waiuru in the south. The T2W program effectively condenses 4 years worth of work. The way we're doing that is by employing zone closures, full road closures in sections as we go. The only way we can deliver that quantum of work is by shutting the whole road off and working across the full width of the carriageway.
T2W has provided us with the opportunity to really operationalise the risk-based approach by having an opportunity to deploy unconventional traffic management methods, such as the deployment of multi-month road closures to allow us to expedite major maintenance and look to apply some new innovative approaches.
Innovation is key to the T2W, and continuous improvement is something we're trying to strive for. With innovation, we've introduced the cone machine, known as Conan. We use this machine for traffic aiding. Normally we would have a couple of TTM vehicles with 2 labourers on the back moving cones. With this Conan machine we've been able to reduce that risk by having no people on the back, which has made things way more efficient, and we've found it extremely successful.
So 18 months ago, Traffic Safe New Zealand made the decision to remove our workers from the back of the trucks. We wanted to improve their safety and remove the anxiety that comes with working in that sort of environment. To date we've purchased 8 cone machines and we're deploying them across our network. It's been really great partnering with Downer on this project. Downer's has been the first civil contractor to deploy these machines. We're really pleased to align ourselves with a company that shares our values of health and safety and keeping everybody safe and doing the job productively as well.
For the first time in New Zealand, we are trialling the E-Series Arrows system. This is a set of E-stop stoplights with a portable boom. This system has a ESAS display board which allows us to monitor people's speed. It also has different functions that allow us to utilise smartwatches that sends alerts to our people on site if anyone is speeding, and it allows us to get them out of the line of fire.
We are really proud to be part of something that is setting a benchmark for what temporary traffic management operating under a risk-based approach will look like. The project has allowed temporary traffic management to showcase itself as an enabler for getting work done.
So this is a really good model to be able to use on other areas of the NZTA's network to deliver rehabilitation programs, and I just see it's a great way to deliver a lot of work really fast and really efficiently to a really high standard.
Collaborating with road controlling authorities has been a really critical component of ensuring the success of the traffic management. Collectively, we've been working together to ensure that not only are we meeting the needs of the road users and ensuring that the road user journey is optimal, but also making sure that the community impacts are well managed and that the safety of our workforce is primary.
So the thing I'm most proud of about the project really is just the attitude of everyone that's come in to smash it out of the park. We've got an ambitious program and we've hit or bettered every single project milestone to date. And it's just the attitude of the whole team to come together and deliver that work has been absolutely amazing and a pleasure to be a part of.
Any questions on?
Any questions? No? Hello?
Thank you, that's all.
Okay. Just going back to me before I jump back into, in regards to the discussion around the, just clarify the Matera situation. Is there anything that we can do, or is it a local, a discussion, a letter, or anything in regards to Kiwi Rails? That's all I'm asking.
Yeah. But he cannot roll in the minister in regards to that. Thanks. Me? What do we have? Signed by the chairs?
Is there any, Mark?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Joe may have something to say on this, I think, Councillor Stringer.
Yes, this is what I was hoping to bring up on general is actually to, obviously, we haven't seen Kiwi Rail coming to these meetings, so they are an important part of the transport plans that we're working on. It would actually be good to have them sitting around the table now. I wonder if we actually need to send something to the minister, actually forcing them to come to these meetings and front up.
Yeah, we had the opportunity at the South Island we could have had a discussion with them. They were certainly there in regards to their long-term spending and things. So, but obviously we didn't know this information. So, but we do. It's just more saying, well, how do we support NZTAs? Obviously, we're keen to get this done, but they're another government department's basically slowing them down. So, just asking a question.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. There's mutual benefits to Kiwi Rail in attending the RTC because, as we've already discussed in the earlier sessions with the vision and the functions or the statements that have come out of that, is one of them is advocacy, and there's mutual support we can give potentially to Kiwi Rail to get funding from the government for projects that are part of the integrated transport system that we've talked about, and it's not integrated without that key component of Kiwi Rail being here. Kiwi Rail used to be regularly involved with the RTC, with this RTC some years ago, but for some reason it's dropped off their list of places to attend, and I think that that needs to happen, because there's no integrate or no we have no knowledge as on the local front as to what their plans are, and we can't assist them in those plans, and they can't assist us, or at least give us information as to what they're doing. We currently they don't advise us of their programs when we're putting together our 3-year funding request to NZTA, and part of that does include funding for rail type projects. So we're really they're leaving us completely in the dark.
I think there are two issues here, and I don't want to conflate them. I think they're both very valid issues. So one is the funding, where in the National Land Transport Fund, a project that is subject to an ARNIP funded project has got money and the other one hasn't. And I think that's a different thing that we need to highlight. I think as far as Kiwi Rail representation around this committee, and I think it would be very, very helpful, I think it's on a needs must basis, and it has to be probably articulated better through invites on Zoom, and it has to be needs driven. They are short staffed, but Gary Icon has been exceedingly good at attending at South Island, which is an odd thing in that it's non-regulatory. It's a nice to have rather than have to have committee, but there's been a lot of change happening, but I'm absolutely sure between him and her name's gone out of my head this other day, Wilson, and there was someone else there the other day as well, that we can probably get some, and I think we need to, so I think the invitation to attend, both for the purposes of doing the vision statements and the checks on that as far as Kiwi Rails go, would be really helpful. I think even in Dunedin they've got some, you've got the Gore Bridge to consider, you've also got Dunedin, I think the double tracking and or the inland port are things that would be good to get their input on, and maybe we need to just generate that. Adele is her name, Adele Wilson. We need to do that. So that's two separate things. I don't want to put them together, because I think who we have to speak to is the funders, and just say, look, this is a really good opportunity to get this right, but it's, I don't know. I mean, do you talk to the minister, the chair of Kiwi Rail? I don't know. Just we can articulate our frustration that it's just a mad situation that one may lose funding because the other has to happen first. I don't know.
Shouldn't that conversation go to the Minister of Transport?
Minister of Railways and Minister of Transport, maybe.
Minister of Transport, because if he's looking at that across the board, and that could be happening, replicated all over New Zealand. And how much is the money we're looking for? Is it not NZTA fund the whole lot and then get a buyback from Kiwi Rail? It's all about funding, isn't it, ultimately?
Yeah. Joe, you want to say something?
Yeah, I agree with that. And plus, they've got a lot of the same issues we have as a region as well. They've got bridge issues. So surely if there's a funding allocation going to be applied for bridges, it applies to both road and rail.
Yeah. Personally, I thought this was, I was encouraged last as we worked through the business cases, and the power thing was going to getting to where we needed to happen, and I think even the locals have been informed it's going to happen, and so it's going to be a bit disappointing locally in regards to that. But it's just, I agree that we need to maybe invite them. Certainly, I had the invitation to come around and talk around here, but there is also a local thing that's the fore, I suppose, that is saying how do we support and encourage them to assess the situation. But Christine,
I don't know how many years the ministry have talked about talking with each other, and we still see these outcomes occurring. I wonder if it's as simple as writing a letter from this committee to each of the ministers and asking them to advising them with the current situation, our understanding, and ask them to please explain what and maybe contribute to what the solution might be, rather than inviting to the next meeting, because that's another couple of months away, and we carry on.
I absolutely would happily second that. I think the key invitation is to Kiwi Rail to be part of the
reasonably simple question to ask, and it's very Thanks, you have
Those two things.
we have got that on the table. Everybody is in, sorry?
Minister of Transport.
I think it's the NZTA board and Kiwi Rail board. They go about them.
Well, I go to the chief executives first. I think.
Okay, in the context of that.
And then also inviting Kiwi Rail to the rest. That part of the next.
Wouldn't think it out.
Sorry, what's the rest of the resolutions? Right.
For the NZTA, CE and
Highlighting the issues of funding in Mataura.
Crossing. Also encouraging attendance at the next meetings. Just to put the invitation there. Mataura crossing, rather crossing.
Different issues, same report.
Right.
Can I just understand the Queensland business case? And where that's going. There are a number of big issues in Queensland. And it seems to me that we have a solution as a whole, but we're only funding, and a bit like the State Highway to Glenorchy, we funded one part and you get there and you can't go anywhere and you wonder why the investment's here. Everyone's wondering why the investment's here. It seems to be a really good thing to highlight that just doing a wee bit occasionally actually isn't the way to go, because it's delivering more frustrations and absolutely none of the value. Is there any other constructive way that this regional transport committee can engage, or should be doing something both on the PT side and on the state highway works that could see some progress and long-term funding? There's one for you, Quentin.
Yeah, so stage 2 in fracking flats is obviously critical for the solution. So we tried to get it in the NLTP, but obviously we managed to get it as a possible activity, which means it is a high priority. But it's unlikely to be funded in this period, so that's the current status. How you advocate for that, I guess, is kind of up to the committees. But we see it as critical as an organisation to the actual solution. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, happy with the answer.
Yeah. I know in many ways this is just business as usual and it's a process and we get frustrated with. But when you get roads of national significance, this isn't on there. It's that. It's a big bar to lift up to that, apparently. But in Otago, this is really...
Yeah. I mean, so it is a road of regional significance in the GPS, but there was a total budget allocation of, what was it, 6.4 billion for all of those roads of regional significance, and Queenstown's solution was a lot more than what was available. So therefore we're doing stage 1 because that's the key sort of nodal issue on the network. But yeah, we understand, I guess as officers, we need stage 2 to make fractal plants work successfully. So yeah, that's where we're at. It's a possible activity, and we keep advocating for it at officer level, but obviously there's a wider discussion.
Okay. Right, Steve.
Sorry, just in relation to 3 there.
Yep.
I think it's writing a letter to the chief executives, noting the current situation and asking for advice on their next steps, and to have that here by the next meeting.
Okay.
It needs to be specific.
Yeah.
Otherwise, yeah, nothing will happen.
Okay. And sorry, Chair.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, not my place to say, but yeah, the ministers of transport is responsible for the rail network improvement. investment plan as well. So there are two sort of separate processes. I'm not sure writing to our CE is going to do anything other than what we've already set out.
So more to the ministers.
Could go to the minister with a copy to the chief executive, so I'm not surprised.
Yeah. Then that sounds, can you sort of get that tightened up? Are you happy to, Christine, and take you to move and second the four here while I'm going, or do you want? But once we get this right up, written up,
I think it's four recommendations for engineering.
well, there's four there, it's no five people if you want. We've got just got recommendations there to do.
I think. So I think Russ understands the intent of the grant.
Yeah, you'll be able to.
Rather than writing the detail.
Yeah. We'll work on that theory and get things going. So, okay, we've got those four in there, mover and seconder for them. Yeah, we'll put that all in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Gary. Thanks.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes.
So I'm going to keep on value. I'm sorry. Is there any move as we talk about 10-year and 30-year timeframes for NZTA to come out with a more, and that certainly was, I think we have a starter of the day. I think it was stress and I talked about. Are there any moves to look at the longer time frame apart from 4-year electoral cycle for embedding some of these projects? Or is that something we should actually be advocating, because that's actually why we're figuring out these systems?
I think that was why the current government signalled a move to 10-year GPS. So I think that's my encouragement with Queenstown is high priority and marked as possible. It's just the funding buckets a challenge, but what the RTC desperately needs to do is ensure that it's a high priority activity going into 27 NLTP for us.
So, sorry, Jeremy, I think it's something that it's only one example of things we have to get right. As we develop the regional land transport plans and our TAs, the sooner we can get that and sooner we can prioritise setting up potentially in a 10-year timeframe instead of a 3-year. Will we be assisting the government to go in that direction with the long-term funding better? Can we all undertake to do our best to get to that point?
Indications from the Ministry of Transport at the present time are that they want, and that's where the project that Ian was talking about, looking at better forecasting of the figures. They're looking for 10-year, they're looking for certainty, they're looking for better information so that they can better brief the minister on the forward funding that's actually going to be required, where it's going to be required. So the processes are actually starting. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Sorry.
Is it these sort of projects that are really high level and have national sort of significance? Should we be looking to get bipartisan agreement on these to give that certainty? Because with our electoral cycles that we've already been talking about, all that can be thrown out the window unless you've got bipartisan agreement to maybe not all projects, but to certain sort of projects like the one we're talking about early in the piece, so that provides that certainty.
Look, the South Island wide, we're trying to get to that point around the South Island trees. I think the more that we can do, and that's why if we looked at planning in a different way, where we didn't worry about all the words at the front, and that's same old, often every TA in every region. It's actually the detail and charts at the end that are the priorities, and there'll be priorities by TAs and then priorities by regions. And if we're not trying to beat each other up, but actually looking at it as a network, what that end result looks like is our priorities. I think will give us a much better chance of investment. So that's where I think we should be spending a lot more time actually getting that detail right and prioritising amongst ourselves as TAs here. I think that's where they're wanting to go at a South Island level as well. I mean, we're all dependent on the Christchurch and the Ashburton bridges to get our supplies down to our supermarkets. That's how easy it is. If we want to have people being fed in a resilient situation. So I think we have to lift our heads up, stop being parochial. I think someone talked about tribes earlier. And really do that a lot better.
Right.
Yeah.
I think we've had enough discussion on that. So, hey, look, at the moment, we'll just have a 5-minute pit stop. If that's all right. Got plenty of
What
things.
time are you working towards the finish?
Yeah, it's very soon. So.
Well, is it worth taking a break if we're going?
Well, it just, I mean, technically you should have a 5-minute break every 2 hours anyway. You know that, but it's up to everyone if we need to keep going, but there could be people that want
Staff especially.
staff and things like that, so we'll take 5 and then be back here as soon as we can. Okay, and we'll try and discuss the rest of the thing.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Yes.
25 past.
You probably have to pay this.
There's really anyway.
Is that thought simple?
Is it the same time?
Normal. We can come to see.
Rightio, thanks for that. We'll carry on 9.6, an update on the draft Otago Regional Public Transport Plan. I think it was Lorraine, I take it that the report's been read. You can give us that.
Yeah, we'll just take this really quickly. It's read in the interest of time. The copy of the draft RPGP was circulated to the committee due to the timing of the committee meetings. Submissions have now closed, and we're actually starting hearings next week, next week. So it's a pretty comprehensive rewrite of the RPTP based on, I guess, current numbers, product of its time, which is basically the COVID era, but also some of the things that we've discussed today, some significant business cases that ORC developed, including Queenstown Public Transport Services business case, and another one for Dunedin, which wasn't and now isn't in, but it's around the service level. So and then the need to address the government direction on private share for public transport, the influence that what we're considering in terms of the fair product and things like zones and things like that.
Okay, thanks. Is there any questions, clarification in regards to that report? No, can I have a move on? Jim?
I'd just say that the people of Oamaru are extremely complimentary, that once again, they've been bypassed in the discussions on public transport.
Okay, duly noted. Can I have a mover and a second to note the report? Yes. Ian? Second, yeah, Jim. All in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Gary. Right, we'll move on to 9.7, the Southland Regional Public Transport. Russell, it has been read.
We'll take it as being read. The difference here is that in Otago City prepare the regional public transport plan under the transfer agreement from Environment Southland from a number of years ago. So the consultation has finished on that.
Just last week completed.
Last week.
Yep, so we're compiling things at the moment.
Okay. So it's for information. I think in the time that I've been involved in the RPC, we've never really brought RPTPs and those discussions to this committee. So put it in front of you so that you're aware of what's happening in that space.
If I might just speak to it slightly, Russell.
Yeah.
One of the challenges, as Lorraine's pointed out, is gear components, having to work through that without damaging the patronage and use. And because it's got a very small network, I think there's only 3, maybe 4 buses on the system at any one time. But it's a vital part of our community. We have significant youth, significant old people, and there's people who are financially challenged. So we try and design our system to meet those folks' needs. Private share is not really helping us achieve those goals. But we will push on as much as we can. In this case here, we're just looking at tweaking our priorities slightly. We're maintaining a value for money, a strategic component, as well as an environmental one. So we're reasonably happy. The feedback we've got from the public has been supportive. So yeah.
Thanks, Bob. Christine?
Thank you. It will probably be hard to describe this as a regional transport plan. It's an Otago transport plan. I noted with interest topic 2 in the Otago plan, where asked should we support community transport services in smaller towns and rural areas. I'll be interested in the response because, of course, the cost is an effective barrier to doing this in the wider area, and what the expectations are and what are the possibilities of providing the subsidised transport in the rural areas. And since you've asked the question, I think it could be quite relevant.
We won't go down the track of subsidised. Let's just talk about the potential for transport options across the rural community. And for that, to that extent, there is for Southland, it's mentioned in the transport options, community transport is mentioned in there. It's mentioned in the Otago one in a bit more detail. Without preempting anything with our councillors that are sitting, my councillors that are sitting around the table, there's a report going to the next strategy and policy committee meeting on community transport and community transport options, and how we, as a council and as the regional councils, will become involved, if you like. Now, if you're talking transport options, you can then start expanding that and potentially talking about the possibility of services that might in the future be subsidised. So we're starting to expand that discussion, and that's what we've done at the regional level over and above the work that the Otago City have done.
Thank you, and that'd be useful, I think, to both come back to Gore and Southland District Council so we can assist in the exploration of what the opportunities might be or otherwise.
You will need to be absolutely involved.
Yes.
Thanks. Okay.
I think it was in, maybe I got it wrong, Southland Chairs that we had a presentation, or was it at this meeting that we got the presentation from Timaru?
Southland Chairs.
Southland Chairs. Look, I think there's a whole lot of really good stuff being out there, and I think one of the learnings that we may want to pass on to not just at the vision and the head up points on the Regional Land Transport Committee is that we never have a induction for Regional Transport Committee members. And I think it'd be really helpful to think about the things that would be, that you started the next round with an idea of what are all of the types of community transport that could link to a regional passenger transport. It would be really helpful to have some of those models rolled out. And you could do it at South Island Wide actually on Zoom. Get some of those presentations so that people can actually know the sort of things that are out there already rather than trying to reinvent the wheel. And I, again, gift to the next Regional Land Transport Committee, maybe something that we think about having a whole day induction, not just about what we already do, but knowing how other people deal with some of those issues, know what we don't know, or learn what we don't know so that you can be looking back to the next term the same.
No, good idea. Right, any other questions in regards to that? No? I'll put that, someone to note the report. Okay, and seconder, Christine, all in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Okay, move on to 9.8, time of use charging, regional sector submission.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is something that may or may not be congestion charging in another word. Probably not going to happen in Otago, I don't suspect.
Gore?
Maybe Gore might want to do something. However, because of the time frame for getting submissions in, it wasn't really possible to bring to all the committees. So TSIC through the regional CEOs group put together a submission. Submission was attached. And I just see an email come through today where they've been, TSIC has been advised of the time frame for attending the select committee. So they're attending the select committee on this. And whether it will be staff from Greater Wellington that end up there, or whether it will be our CD sponsor from the CEO of the Greater Wellington Regional Council that actually goes to the select committee. But so there was a regional response, and then you've got that in front of you.
That's very good. Any point of clarification? Pretty straightforward.
I'm not quite sure that I got the submission. I'm really happy about the process and I'm happy to support, but did everyone get the submission?
No.
Oh, we'll get it.
It's my fault. I'm just raising now. I should have when I replaced on Saturday evening. I didn't think you wanted an email from me. I'm absolutely confident that you'll have it right. If it could just be circulated. Thank you.
No, all good. If I can have a mover and seconder, okay. So All in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Right, move on to South Island Regional Transport Committee's Chair's activities.
So once again, Mr. Chair, the committee met on the 7th of April, at least the combined RTC chairs met on the 7th of April. There are a number of topics covered. I had hoped that we'd have the minutes to circulate before this meeting. As I indicated earlier, they arrived on Friday, checking before they go anywhere. But the topics that we've covered are listed there basically. Yeah, perhaps regional representatives that were at that meeting might want to make any further comment.
Yeah, look, it was a good meeting in regards that we did have the Minister. Well, we were going to have the Minister of Transport, but he had more important things to do. It was good having Simon Bridges, the NZDA board chair. And as I said earlier on, that he was quite upfront, so he wouldn't usually turned up to these things, but he obviously feels that he might need to connect, and so it's a good opportunity for them. They're obviously making an effort to come down and talk. The other one was we did have the Kiwi Rail and Lisa, and now they're from Kiwi Rail on the future strategic direction. That was really interesting investment. One of the points they said they've got one of the worst railway systems probably in the world at the moment, and they said, well, if they invest and do what they're doing, they'll have one of the best. So that's a major, and I think if I can remember the engines that they're 50 odd new locomotives, not engines, are they? I think I can get the right term.
Locomotives.
At 14 million each, 54 of them. There's big investment going to go into this just to get efficiencies and that. So they're investing in this serious money into that railway, Kiwi Rail, going to be a major part of the freight discussion. Ria. Obviously working through the South Island transport story, there's a lot of work being done that's coming to the fore, and it's great to see, hopefully get that presented, bring it into the public, South Island freight studies too, and working through the next steps and agreeing to where we're heading with that. So that's probably, Katie, you got any more?
Look, it's a really positive group working, not for any sort of private gain. It is about the big story, and I think the main thing, I think what we're going to try and do at the end, that don't hold me to it, is pitch for a different funding system for the South Island. Really, the funding system working in at the moment only works for the North Island, and we need to get something that looks like resilience in a more focused way because of the way South Island roading network works. Really, yeah.
I think every meeting, I would say that the SDC's scenarios come up, goal scenarios come up. We always keep on, probably sick of us saying it, but you just got to keep hammering away at those and the funding of it. Just saying there's nobody down here to fund all these things.
Yeah, we should actually say that what we did was we had Simon Bridges here. We actually all pitched. I didn't because I sat there as chair, but every area pitched what the world looks like to them and their frustrations, and in a light, positive, what it does for productivity, what it does for resilience, what it does, and it was we want to be there generating this pipeline of work, but it has to make sense. And Ian was here, there's a few others in the room that were there, but I think it was a positive. It wasn't you're not looking after us. It was this is how you can help us, and what we need to make sure is that that work is there in your TA work, funded or unfunded, so that we can show that picture and have that pipeline. And I think consistent word is we're going to generate that pipeline of work that will get industry based here wanting to do it. And that's the only sensible way that we can pitch at the moment.
Absolutely.
Everyone played their very good parts on it.
Yep. Any questions in regards to that? No, so we've just got, passed it on. Next meeting. Yeah, note report. What do you think? So can I move her and second her to note report? And Phil, Abstain, all in favour say aye. Let's carry
We'll
it, right.
circulate the minutes once they've been.
Yeah. Yeah, you know. 9.10, what's it? Saying right, 9.1, right? Yeah, 19, oh, sorry. Proposed date, Monday, the 28th July, that will happy, confirmed. 28th July, oh, yeah, we haven't got a destination yet, have we? Or have we? It wasn't wrong there.
Other than for parking, we'll just come to you.
Monday, the 28th.
Happy either any which way, Queensland, Alex, or Jeff.
Did Murray want to?
Where haven't we been? For?
Could I confirm that?
District council.
Great, I can hear.
Can I just say a comment that in the winter conditions, perhaps
Yeah.
a shorter distance we have, because that allows us to leave it later and.
Yeah. As
Jim can zoom.
Jim.
No, I don't.
You don't want?
Let's go to Gore. Nothing wrong with Gore.
I'd like to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, let's go down the road to my old hometown, Mataura.
Oh.
You ever
Well,
see an
one
intersection
meeting,
there?
Let's go down and have a look at the
Is
intersection.
everybody happy with Gore? Course.
Let's get the ODT out there with
We'll get-
Southland Times. We'll have a photo and speak.
Right,
to them.
we'll hear from Gore that they can accommodate us. We'll put that as where we're heading anyway, so. Right. And is there any extraordinary urgent business? None, public excluded. None. We'll close. Phil, do you want? Phil, if you can.
We'll close with a drawing from a different culture today, if you don't mind. So closing mantra is, may the road rise to meet you, may the wind be always at your back, may the sun shine warm upon your face, may the rain fall soft upon your fields, may the hand of a friend always be near, may good luck be with you wherever you go. Thank you very much.
Project can somebody. Yes, and everything else.